Hello, good afternoon. I'm happy to introduce to you our speaker for this afternoon. We have Mrs. Lubica Mueller. Lubica Mueller earned her undergraduate and master's degrees in business and management from Comenius University in Slovakia. She graduated master's degree with distinction in 2005. She studied English at California Polytechnic State University in USA and marketing at the University of Mannheim in Germany. Lubica started her professional career at Amphenol Tuchel Electronics and at Richard Fritz GmbH, where she gained practical experience in the field of production and organizational management in the highly competitive German automotive industry. After moving to the United States in 2007, Lubica worked for 7 years at Andrews University, managing a hybrid business that produced science lab equipment for the educational industry while providing jobs and internship for students. During this time, she also became an adjunct faculty member in the School of Business at Andrews University, teaching courses on entrepreneurship and small business management. Lubica is currently finishing her PhD degree in management studies at the University of Leicester. Her research focuses on the processes that capacitate Philippine coffee farmers as economic or entrepreneurial agents and enable them to create new market connections for poverty alleviation purposes. Lubica holds the Tony Beasley Award 2018 from the British Academy of Management and European Management Journal for the academic paper on her research project. Lubica's research interests are in the area of social entrepreneurship, sustainable supply chain and value chain, marketing, market studies, and marketing theory. She is also interested in exploring relations between human agency and technology by using the actor network approach to organization. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Lubica Mueller as she presents her research entitled Heartfelt Design, Reshaping the Imperfect Philippine Coffee Market.
Thank you very much for having me today. I'm really happy that I can present a little bit about my work that I have been doing here in the Philippines over the last several years. Let me share my presentation with you. Okay. May I ask the organizers if I'm allowed to share now because I am not able to access it?
Yes, please. You can.
Okay.
You can share.
So what is the problem?
I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Do you have this screen share screen option there down below?
I do.
Okay.
We were trying it before. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Okay. She's also the co-host, so she can do anything what we can do here. So.
Okay. Advanced.
Well, while we are setting up the presentation, I would like to remind to the audience that you may post your questions to the speaker in the Q&A box. You can see Q&A chat. Please do not post your questions to the regular chat, but rather to the Q&A chat. And we will entertain questions after the presentation. By the end of the colloquium, you will be we will send we'll post the evaluation link in the chat, so you can also help us evaluate the colloquium and help us improve.
Luby, you're muted. We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what happened, that because we were trying to share this before, but
Yes.
I'm not able to access it for now. But maybe I can walk through the presentation just by sharing or what I did, even though you don't see pictures.
You can just send the
Okay.
point to us, and we can share the
Okay, let's
PowerPoint
see.
for you.
I'm not quite sure what happened on my side here.
No problem.
Okay, let me do that.
Yeah, Jasmine, can you paste your email address in the chat so Luby can send it to your email address, Jasmine, and you play it.
One way to share Lubis is just to share the whole desktop. If you cannot share a single file, it can be just the whole desktop, and then you can just activate your presentation. So are you able to access your presentation, or it's not accessible?
Right, there you go.
Yeah. You can just start it.
Okay. Are you able to see it now?
No, I think we're seeing your Explorer. Sorry, we're seeing your file Explorer.
Finder.
Yeah, your Finder.
If you double click on the presentation once again.
Because I see it on my own sharing. You're okay. I saw it myself.
Okay.
Let me see one more time. How about now?
Not yet. I think you should go to the PowerPoint itself. If you share the screen and share the PowerPoint, go to the window that is showing your PowerPoint.
Okay, let me try one more thing here. Okay, I sent also the stuff to the presentation to
Jasmine. Okay, you're muted again, Luby. But Jasmine, I think, Jasmine, can you open your email and download the presentation of Luby? Can we do that, please?
Yes, I'm downloading now.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, so you're able to do it now. So that's excellent. Excellent.
Are you able to see now?
Yes, yes, yes. That's
Okay.
excellent, Luby.
You just need to start to make it.
Excellent.
Is it visible now?
Yes, yes. Now
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. I apologize for this. We were trying it before, something, I don't know why it didn't work out now, but anyway, thank you so much for having me and thank you for your patience. I would like to talk a little bit today just about the research itself, and it's going to be focused on how social enterprise here in the Philippines is working to make certain changes in the way how the markets are organized. Part of the way how I was going about the research was in an ethnographic style, and you will hear some of it throughout the presentation. And if you want to know a little bit more about the ethnographic experience, I would encourage you if you could then pose the questions at the end. So I will just give you a little background to the research that has been done here in the Philippines over the last several years. I would like to start with a little quote. The only way that we can really transform something is to do something that is real, that is really from the heart. This quote was said by Basil Reyes. He is the co-founder of Bottle Central Social Enterprise. And when I interviewed them for the very first time, he was very excited about the work they have been doing and they were starting to do with the communities around the Philippines. Basil and his wife Vie, they worked first as development practitioners, and they were going throughout the various communities in the Philippines, trying to help them set up certain livelihood projects so these people can have better income and alleviate, get out of poverty. And when they came to coffee farmers, they saw that this particular group of people, of these farmers, was very, very discouraged. They said, you know, we do so much and we work hard and we are still remaining poor. You know, there is something wrong about the way you know, we interact with markets, we interact with the people around us. So they were earning very little. They have very big bargaining power against the traders they were working with or whom they were selling their coffee products or coffee beans. And their interests were not represented in the industry policies at that time. And when I talked to Basil and Vie, they said, you know, we went to do a lot of meetings with the government and with the industry giants like Nestle, who kind of meet in the Philippines and they make these policies for the whole industry. But we saw a lot of talking about how to help farmers, but we didn't see really farmer being represented. It was not focused on the farmer. It was kind of this top down, but the farmers were not really represented in the policies that these people were making. And so we started as development practitioners, actually, but we were thinking, what can we do? Can we do something more for the farmers around? How can we put farmer at the center of what is happening around them? And here you can see something what I would label as imperfect market organizing. The way where the farmers were finding themselves was in a way because the way how the market here in the Philippines was originally or conventionally organized. So what you can see here is something what is called the value chain, and it's a captive value chain. And it's called captive because, as you can see here, I'm going around the coffee farmer. It's the person, or those are the people who stand at the beginning and of the whole chain of relations. But these people actually are the ones who remain very poor. what happens is that these people usually just grow coffee beans and they sell them to the traders for very little money. And the traders and other coffee processors, then they sell it to other buyers who process coffee up to the consumers. And you can see that the relations are kind of shaped in a linear way. And the farmer is sort of at the beginning and deals with only one or two players in maximum. And that kind of lowers the ability of that farmer to actually negotiate certain conditions of the trade. They pretty much can sell raw materials for very little money, and that's all what they can do. So they have very limited market interactions, very limited income. On this slide, you can see what I was just briefly mentioning before, that coffee farmers, they get income from either selling the cherries or green coffee beans. So not much processing happens in their case. And for that, for these inputs, they receive very little money. Versus when you go into the roasting of coffee and brewing coffee, that's where most of the money is being made. And that's why Nestle, or that's why Starbucks, or all these kind of coffee shops you have here, they earn most of the income from processing these coffee beans and selling them to the customers. That's where most of the profit is being made. So farmers, of course, remain poor if all they can do is just sell the raw materials and not involved in the other processes that are within the coffee market industry. So Basil and V.A. Reyes, the two people I talked about at the beginning, they decided to establish a social enterprise. And a social enterprise, maybe many of you or some of you might be familiar with that term. It's sort of a hybrid business, which is trying to achieve several goals at the same time. So first of all, they of course need to make some money so they can sustain themselves, but beyond that, they try to create certain social value or environmental impact. So in this case, this social enterprise that Basil and Via established was trying to, yes, stay within the industry. So they became kind of coffee processors themselves, but they tried to help all the other farmers in some way and kind of, and work with them, work with the industry stakeholders, with government, to alleviate poverty of the farmers. So there was other mission than just purely making money for themselves. So that's the idea of the social enterprise. And in this particular value chain, they were trying to, yes, improve the situation of these smallholder farmers through various interventions, and that I will briefly mention them throughout the presentation. So my research question in this particular setting is, how can the social enterprise reorganize the market relations that I just showed you? Because those were disadvantages for the farmers. Can the social enterprise somehow position itself there that would make certain changes within the whole industry, transform it, that these farmers can actually earn more and play different role within the market setting? So for this, when I'm talking about this, you kind of hear that there is certain shaping, transformation being mentioned in the present, creating or changing, inventing, and that is, those terms are usually associated with sort of constructivist approach to studying markets. Markets in this case, I am defining an agencement. That is a very complicated word coming from French. And we can replace it with something as a network or as a configuration, market configuration. How can we shift or change the market configuration so that the farmers can have a better position that would allow them to act differently within the market? So this is the kind of the framework I am working with. And here on this slide, you have another terms that I have been kind of using within my research that is related to market design and market shaping. In neoclassical economics, some of you who are from the business studies, we usually understand market as an abstract entity that we can sort of figure out through certain mathematical relations or functions. We can calculate supply and demand. We operate with certain abstract forces, and we take this kind of for granted and say, okay, if this and that fits, we do the calculations and we come up with certain idea, and that's good. That's one approach. Other approaches are also sort of more on a constructivist side, where we talk about markets as emergent or as entities that can be changed, that can shift, that can be transformed. And now we come into the point, okay, how much people or certain material devices play the role in this market shaping. So when we talk about markets themselves, we can talk about some people who would be sort of like designers or engineers of these markets. And in this case, I am relating it back to that social enterprise or the social entrepreneurs who said, we would like to make certain change within the market in a way that it helps these farmers. So these people were active in creating or thinking through certain model or image that they would be presenting how this market could operate in order to help these farmers. And usually it is motivated with certain desire to address certain market failure, to make something better, to create a, so to speak, good market. Those are the ideas attached to that kind of role of designing something. Now, market shaping is sort of the act of creating or performing, enacting this sort of idea to how the market could operate. And that means in this case, well, you remember the one slide I showed you about the value chain, that means that maybe they need to bring in some new actors into the market, or eliminate some of the roles, or sort of create new connections, different connections that would address the situation of the farmers. So then the market itself, if you look at market itself from this perspective, would be sort of an interplay between the intentional design of some people or some actors and the spontaneous evolution caused by multiple agencies acting within the market setting. Why I'm saying is this, that sometimes, and we know it probably from strategic management, we plan certain ideas and we want to execute them. And that works sometimes very well, but sometimes it does not, because other things come into play, other actors come into play. And, we foresee something, we want to have it done that way, but we cannot control it many times completely. So then that means that we can also end up with unpredictable outcomes, which are in the market studies called sort of misfires, and they address the differences between the plan and the reality that actually then happens. And I will show you some results from my study that actually nicely demonstrate this idea, what happened with the farmers that I was researching. So, as AQRA is about the various methods, qualitative methods. This one was ethnographic method. That means I spent quite a long time actually in the field. It was probably the most enjoyable time of my research, and that is something what ethnography can offer. I would say that you as a researcher, you can get close, it's very hands-on, you get out there, you speak to the people, and that was fascinating for me. That's actually that was one of the things I really wanted to do with my research. Living in a different place, I wanted to get to know the culture, get to know the people, know how these people live, what they do, and who is attached to them. That I'm not just theorizing something in the on the armchair, but I am actually being able to be involved with people and kind of get hands-on, get my hands dirty, so to speak. So this research took place in 2000, at the end of 2018 and through 2019. Thanks God, everything was finished before COVID hit. So I was able to gather this data and do all my interviews, all my observations in that time frame before we had to, pretty much before landscape changed for a lot of researchers, I would say. So most of the time I spent within the community of these farmers and kind of observing what they were doing. Was working also with the social entrepreneurs and then some other stakeholders who were involved, which was several Philippine government agencies, Those who are from the Philippines, you will know about Department of Trade and Industry, about the Department of Agriculture. So some of these bigger agencies that are very much involved here in poverty alleviating approaches for farmers. Okay, and I will share a couple of these findings that come from that side of that social enterprise. So here I am showing you what actually this social enterprise were trying to, the Bota Central as the market designer or redesigner, when they were trying to reshape the coffee industry, what they were trying to actually achieve. So on the left side, you see the kind of the linear way of thinking about the market, where the coffee farmer is standing at the beginning and has the has certain one particular role that plays and has one connection to the traders. That's it. And here they are actually on the right side, you can see the CBE, what you can see there, that's the community-based enterprise. That's pretty much talking about the community itself. The community of farmers would become networked. So they would start developing connections to various players at the same time. Now, how can they do that? Well, if they create an enterprise themselves, that means that they can not just grow coffee, but they can roast coffee, and they can create own coffee shop and where people stop by and consume the products. Then that way they become an enterprise that kind of absorbs or can perform all the activities that would be normally spread out through the many players that we talked about previously. So in that sense, it's kind of a holistic approach. The social enterprise would perform all these functions, and in that sense, it can start connecting to not just traders, like you see here up on the top, but it can actually connect to other community-based enterprises. They can maybe exchange some of their blends. It can connect to other coffee shops. It can connect also to supermarkets, because they would have their own product that they can promote through supermarkets. And if you would go to Robinson's and look at some coffee blends, local ones from, for example, Benguet from up north, Philippines, those are coffee blends that come from these farming communities I'm talking about. So it actually does work in reality, and they have already some results happening as of now. So you can see that all in this model, it's a network model. So you are redesigning the industry or the market by giving these actors who are here new roles and new market connections. You open up the possibilities for that. So that is kind of the vision. That's the idea on which the Bota Central social enterprise was working. And in order to do so, they put several, I would say, devices in place, or several other things that could help create this kind of shift or transformation. So one of them was here. It's on this model. This is another way of looking what I was just telling you, where the CBCSE is the social and it's the community, and they are connected to other actors, new actors. One of them is Philippine Coffee Alliance. That was one partner or one actor that the Bota Social Enterprise put in place, that these communities can connect. So it was a sort of as a platform, the Philippine Coffee Alliance, where these communities would meet each other. They would meet also the government players, so they would have certain voice in the industry, and they could kind of find a way to cooperate together. So let me come here. So the Philippine Coffee Alliance was sort of like a temporary design or device that would support that design, what I was talking about. And it encouraged the farmers to start such coffee enterprises. It helped them to connect with the government players. And for example, what also happened there, that the government agency, Department of Agriculture, that was part of this Coffee Alliance, took on a new role as a consumer of these coffee blends. So some of these communities that created these coffee blends themselves and still didn't go to supermarkets, because that is quite a difficult thing to achieve. But anyway, the first customer or official customer could be, or was for some of them, the Department of Agriculture, which bought back their products, and that helped them to kind of create kind of the ongoing production of products before they start to create other and new market connections. The other thing which the Bote Central social enterprise put in place was a roaster. So they invented a specific roaster that was kind of really like targeted, or was meant to help particularly the Filipino coffee farmers. Now, you can buy all kinds of roasters around the world, but the designs are often too complicated, that you will need professional roast masters to be able to operate those machines. Not everyone can do it. People go to some sort of trainings or schools and those kind of things. So now we talk about simple farmers who have not done these things before, and you want to have a machine that is going to be simple for them to operate and they can handle. So Bote Central social enterprise, they said, we need to invent such a machine for our Filipino farmers so they can roast the coffee and they can make these coffee blends. And you can see on the right side several pictures. You can see one of the ladies in the community where I was researching how she is approaching the machine. This one it's really neatly made. It's a very user-friendly design for smaller quantities of coffee, and it functions almost like a kitchen appliance where you push certain button, and the roasting sort of happens by itself. You don't have to really monitor it too much. It has a sophisticated design inside. I will not go into the technical details, but anyway, it simplified the way for the farmers how they can roast coffee without having actually too much knowledge, or needing too much knowledge or too much skills of the coffee processing itself. So that was a device that they created, they invented, and they through government, they were actually offering through government funds, they were offering to these farming communities, and most of them actually have this one roaster present, and they are using it in order to roast coffee. So I come back to that quote which I mentioned at the beginning from Basil Reyes, when he said that the only way that we can transfer something is something that we do that is real, that is from the heart, something that we stand for, that is really truly our passion, that we want to help people. There was a second part to this quote, which said, how is it going to play out in the end? Only the high knows. And so now I come to some of those misfires, or some of the outcomes that were maybe not those outcomes that they envisioned. So for Bote Central, the outcomes were, I would say, from my evaluation, were great. They themselves became very essential player or new player in this transformed market, right? Because they brought the Riordan roaster for the farmers, so there was income for them. They kind of in that network model that I showed you, they became one of the players. So they in a way started to trade blends and coffee beans with the farmers themselves in the community. So they, in a way, they eliminated the role of the traders, or became kind of trader themselves. And there is one interesting thing of what I would say, it's also they play a contradictory role, because on one hand they are enabler. They enabled for the farmers to act in certain way, but at the same time they sort of become also a competitor, because Bote Central was buying then also the beans from these farming communities and creating blends themselves. So in some way they're all partners and friends, but they're also partly competitors, if you want to think about it in those terms. The second thing, what I want to say, is the outcome for the farmers. And for the farmers, the one community, I was doing ethnography, so I was focused on one community, not all of them. There are probably about 70 of them within the Philippines, but my research was ethnographic, so I went into one community and into details what happened in one community. So in this particular farming community, the model worked quite well. They had one or two farmers who were actually very savvy, and they used all of this help, all the equipment and the knowledge and the trainings they were receiving to develop coffee blends, and they managed to develop really interesting coffee blends and shape new market connections with the help of Bota Central, social enterprise, and also with the help of the government actors. One thing that became a misfire, or sort of the unexpected, was one particular blend they developed. It was called Maestro 1888. And this was a high-end blend that they wanted to sell to high-end customers. But the process of making it was very complicated. So they were not able to continuously supply the materials needed, so they could kind of have the ongoing production of that particular blend. And secondly, because it was so successful, a lot of actors who were kind of helping or were partly involved in creating it kind of were interested in owning it. So they got into issues about the intellectual property rights, about the brand of that blend, and they had disputes with some of the government agencies as to who is going to own it. Is it going to be a provincial blend? Is it going to be a provincial brand, not just blend, but brand? They would carry, or is it gonna be a local one, regional one? Who is or are the farmers gonna own it? Who is gonna own it? So they were not able to resolve these tensions or this kind of these negotiations. And the farmer actually, who was kind of the engineer of this particular coffee blend, became quite discouraged, and so they stopped producing it, which was very unfortunate. So as you know, it was a great idea. It worked for about half a year, and then it died out because of all these issues they had. One thing that was sort of the unexpected but interesting outcome, that the cooperative or the enterprise there, the community-based enterprise, continues producing the coffee blend, one that was successful and that they could sustain. But the inventor who invented these coffee blends, he left, and together with other farmers, they started dragon fruit farming, where they actually used quite a bit of the know-how, and knowledge of certain processes like organic farming and so on. They used that in order to start sort of a new venture or new project in the community about dragon fruit farming. So that was also unexpected outcome. That was not negative, it was positive in some way, because it kind of brought life to a completely new project. The negative part of it was that this whole idea of who owns what and how do people work together in community was not that clear, and it created quite a bit of tensions within the community itself. So the danger, I think, of this kind of transformation is when you start to make the community-based enterprises, the people need to work together in a very different way, and that can create often certain tensions. And if they don't know exactly what they're doing, then it can produce certain problems. So those were sort of the unexpected outcomes, particularly in this community. Other communities might have different results. So the question, what I was citing at the beginning, was how did Bota Central address the market imperfection, the way how market was organized, and how did they do? How did they do? Do they address it well? Did they achieve any good results? Interesting questions here are, we can see that the Bota Central, with the transformation of the market, benefited itself. Did they benefit more than the farmers? That would be interesting thing to know. How do other farmer communities maybe benefit from such market interventions? And how do farmers detach and attach to new players? That could be interesting thing to research in this context. Is this market reorganizing or transformation? Is it an enactment of a new form? So are we moving to a really like a new model? As you remember that picture of being sort of in a network setting instead of just a linear value chain. So do we really enact here something completely new, innovative, or are we just reshaping a little bit something what was old? Can we even kind of jump to a completely new system that would help the farmers? And are there any misfires for the social enterprise itself? Would that system exist if the social enterprise left? So those are some questions that I'm still left with based on the research that I was doing. And yeah, certain possible contributions. Currently, I'm working with market studies group in Europe, and that group is very much looking into sort of the idea of good markets. Are there any markets that are being shaped for certain particular socioeconomic purposes to address certain issues? So I am talking here about reshaping of market into a good market that can address poverty alleviation, and also about the open-endedness of market involvement. That's kind of where I'm doing my research. So that's sort of just giving you a little overview of the research that I have been doing. I hope that some of it made sense to you, because there are a lot of new concepts that maybe you are not familiar with, but I wanted to give you a background. And if you have questions about the research, or more particularly about the ethnographic part, then I will be very happy to answer those questions. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you very much, Luby. That was a wonderful presentation, and I believe it is a presentation that benefits all of us. I can see a lot of questions popping up. I think the first one was from Dr. Dolph, I think, as the first questions. So let me read Dr. Dolph's question. To understand the system within which the farmers function, what other groups or entities did you interview and observe? And maybe after that you can answer, if you can share with us your allocation of time and how you decided when and where to prioritize them.
Yeah. So today I presented more from the side of the social enterprise. The main focus of the whole project was the farmers themselves. So most of the time I spent actually within the farming community. It was here close to IS. It was in Kasileginting. Those who lived here or live here, it's somewhere between People's Park and the kind of it's on the Marikina Ridge place between People's Park in Tagaytay and down south in Nuvali. So there is a stretch. If you drive, then you would see there are a couple of, there's the Kasileginting community. So that's where I was in with my research. The way how I did the ethnographic research, well, as an ethnographer, you kind of go with certain idea, but you need to be ready that it can change, because you do not know what you're gonna end up seeing, who is gonna want to really work with you. All of these things you have to have an idea to present to your ethics board to get approval, but in the reality, everyone kind of has to anticipate that can be a little different. My start there was I started with the cooperative, or with the coffee processing enterprise, because that's where I was endorsed by the social enterprise itself. So the social enterprise kind of functions also as a gatekeeper to these communities. And my completely initial connections were through the social enterprise, who endorsed me there. So I started with the cooperative, or the coffee processing enterprise in Kasileginting. And there I was asking for, I used initially the time to see what they do, how they process coffee, They had certain events happening there where you actually meet the government agents or the officials from the government agencies. They had actually also quite a bit of news coverage there. So there were some of these random actors that appeared once in a while, but most of the time you kind of figure out after going there for a while who are the frequent actors who are there, who seem to be the strongest connections. And the farmers tell you then later also themselves, because the cooperative had own connections, but then the farmers themselves within the community had also additional connections because they acted also kind of in their own right as well. So the actor network theory I'm working with is precisely about that. You try to map out the actors that are involved within the community and within the individual farmers, and then go by that. That's something what I could not have anticipated at the beginning. That's something what you learn as you go, and then you go after those actors. So how I spent and allocated my time, I spent probably 70% of my time, I would say 70-75% of my time with the farmers, where at the beginning I was learning about them where they are. Then I had about a week with each of the key informants. Those were about 7 to 10 farming families, or the houses where I went actually, and that was very helpful. I frequently went to the cooperative back and forth to kind of see through the, what was it, 8 months I was there altogether, involved with the research. So I had a exposure there. And then once they defined the main actors, the government officials, then I went there for particular interviews. In one case, it was kind of involved a little bit of like job shadowing with one of the officials, but most of the time then that was towards the end of the research. When I was done with the community, then I went and had more specific questions for the government officials themselves. So, and that was probably about 10 more interviews just with the various agencies and the various people involved there. So that's how it went. And the whole research was done between October 2018 through June 2019.
Right. So really deep immersion in the coffee farmers.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So there are two more questions here. This one is from Rochelle Veran.
Mm-hmm.
She was asking, since the research was done last 2019, have you checked if the respondents or the coffee traders follow or adapt your model this time? Because the output model will help the farmers a lot to have good market for their products. Was there any follow-up?
Yeah, it's I was there actually in between. We had lockdowns here, so for a while I could not go anywhere. But even when I finished, I stayed in touch with some of the people. So I went there to see what they're doing. They actually were producing coffee. I'm not sure if this model, if it's it's something that can be like we have this and we are implementing it. It happens very quickly. This thing has been ongoing, I would say, since 2007. So we are talking about years and maybe decades of certain transformations. And there are some communities that go faster, and there are going to be some communities that will go much slower. And there are still some communities that are not even touched. So what I heard from Basil and Vie, that they now start to go more to Mindanao, which has not been done at all so far, because that's kind of the domain of Nestle. No one dared to touch that place. And they say, we might go there and we will be the rebels. We will see if we can shake the ground somehow and just do something different there. So this has, potential. It's going to have its struggles and it's going to take its time. So it's hard to say how it's gonna develop. Only the high knows, as I think what they said themselves. So that's probably the open-endedness in that. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So here's another interesting question. What are some of the difficulties and challenges that you get when you interview people?
Yeah. Being in the Philippines and not being Filipina, of course, presents several interesting things. One is language, definitely. I was fortunate enough that probably about half of the farmers had really good English skills that I was able to communicate quite directly. But for the most, for every meeting I went, I took my other helper with me. It's a lady who has been with us since we ever came to the Philippines. And I was thinking for a very long time whom to involve. And she proved to be probably the best person I had on my research because of, she had perfect personality. She was very quiet, kind of withdrawn. She was not disturbing there, but at the same time, she was an amazing bridge between me and the community. Very nice, very courteous. She would listen, kind of in the background what they say, and in the right moment, she would, kind of help to create the glue, to be the glue. And many times people were kind of checking me out through her. So if they knew that she works for us, they would ask her the questions. Okay, so who are they? What are they? And so she was really kind of a good person to have with me. And in some moments she would translate some, but most of the time I was able to manage because of they spoke quite good English. And of course, if you go and talk to government officials, then there is no really language barrier. So they spoke all very English very well. So I was very happy about that. Being a foreigner, um, presented a couple of fun moments. Um, uh, Often they thought that I came there to adopt their children, that I am from I am coming from some humanitarian organization, and there was one particular family that that was kind of the stage thing, and I stopped going there after a while because I figured out what they were on to. So it's like, this is not gonna go anywhere. So, but they really hope that I will come and adopt some of the children because they had too many of them. Some people were thinking that I'm some business developer because that area is very prominent. It has very lucrative places, and whoever knows that area around Nuvali, it's growing. It's a very expensive area, and so quite a few farmers are getting offers from all kinds of business developers to sell their lands and for whatever purposes. So quite there I had that too. So some people were thinking that maybe I'm just kind of going there for my own business, but it didn't take long, and those who didn't want to work with me didn't, and those who wanted, they did. And actually I had quite a number of people where I was very welcome, so it was fine at the end. Yeah.
Right. So maybe why coffee farmers? There are many farmers around the area. Why
Yeah.
do you choose specifically coffee farmers?
uh yeah, it's not very Adventist, right? uh well, I would say it's something well, when I was doing actually sort of the groundwork of learning about value chains, and before I did research, there is quite a few literature that is written about coffee, even in the Philippines. So it was something I knew that I can research. And actually, those who know IS, or the history of IS, this used to be a pineapple and coffee plantation. So I felt like I am a little connecting to the roots here, and those are also the crops that are grown around still in more limited way because it's urbanized now. But yeah, you have still plantations of quite a few plantations of coffee and of pineapples and a couple of other things. So it was something I could do in a fairly close vicinity without going, having to reallocate myself too far. For ethnographic research, I couldn't imagine, leaving family for that period of time somewhere. So it was practical.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Pavel. Sorry, I think I over
Yeah.
the time. It's already 6 o'clock.
May I just use my opportunity to also, first of all, I wanted to welcome Dr. Dolph in our discussion here, and he is former IS Vice President for Academics and also AQRA advisor. So those who are staying with AQRA for longer, you may remember him welcoming always our participants, attendees, every colloquium. Luby, thank you for this presentation. I just wanted to ask a short question myself.
Yeah.
It's just itching to ask. It's about ethnography. Why ethnography and not, let's say, action research? Because you are kind of you are empowering people. You are changing the community. You want to yeah. Change whatever they are doing to have a better profit, to have a better income, which I believe is outstanding. It's awesome. I would commend that study for that. It's not just to explore something and report, but rather to change someone's lives.
Yeah.
Quite innovative. Mhm.
Well, it's a good question. I think there is generally question about how ethnography touches on action research, where are kind of the boundaries between those two areas. I don't think in my case I was actually doing that much myself. You know, I went there really to learn and observe. So in that sense, I would say that if we would probably talk about the social entrepreneurs, they would certainly be more in that action research, because they are the ones that are really going and trying to make the change and the difference. In my case, I was more learning about it. I would say there was a lot of the observation done. Most of it was observations. Then I had some interviews, but that's kind of where I would leave it. That I don't think that I was while I admit that my role is active. I mean, in constructivist research, you have that you need to think about your own role as a researcher, to which way you are transforming or enacting or contributing. I still would think that I was not the primary person to bring certain change or transformation in this context. So I don't know if that answers it really in depth, but yeah, I would still consider it more the ethnographic study.
Yeah, that's interesting. It depends on the perspective which you are looking at the issue.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for sharing. Once again, we have no more time for questions, but we still have some more questions, so we can address them to the speaker later on.
Thank you.
So, Dr. David, Dr. Jasmine, who would be speaking for the certificate?
Yeah,
Okay,
Dr.
maybe
Pavel?
Jasmine can present the certificate.
All right, let me present this certificate of recognition to Lubica Mueller for her valuable services as a resource speaker on the topic Heartfelt Design, Reshaping the Imperfect Philippine Coffee Market during the AQRA Virtual Colloquium 2022-10 on July 28, 2022, given this 28th day of July 2022 at IS, signed by Dr. Arcelia Rosario, Dr. Pavel Zubkov, and Dr. David Lomo. Before we, okay, all right, so